All right, good morning. I think we're going to get started. It looks like most people, the call-ins and join messages have settled down. Good morning, I'm Coral Klein, and I'm with the Washington County Human Services Department. I am the Division Manager for the Children and Families Division. Thank you all for joining us this morning to talk about the Washington County Youth Treatment Center, formerly known as, and today we'll be talking more specifically around Riverbend Place, which is the new name, as we look forward to getting our shelter, community shelter, and residential program up and running. Just a couple of housekeeping pieces for this meeting. Everyone is currently muted. If you've called in, you will have to do *9 to raise your hand to ask a question. You will then have to *6 to unmute yourself to talk. Those of you who joined via the actual Zoom platform, you can raise your hand to talk, and then we will unmute you as well, and you can ask questions, or you can type in questions, and I will do my best to answer those as they come in. There will certainly be time for questions at the end of my section, and then I want to introduce Justin Ernisse from Norris. He is the group care manager at Norris and for Riverbend Place, and we're really excited to have them on board and get started. So we will go through my section on some history and talk about the Community Advisory Committee, which is why you're all here today, and then Justin will pick it up and talk about Riverbend Place and Norris and programming and some things like that. Or we're gonna have some technical difficulties. Here we go. So why we're here today, some of you joined us in January for a meeting that we had right after we had chosen Norris as our new provider for our shelter and residential program. We shared information, history, and some of those things will be similar today about the Youth Treatment Center in our community, the benefits to having a Youth Treatment Center here, our plan for transitioning the kids that were there, what we're going to do in the meantime while the facility was closed. So those pieces we talked about the middle of January, right before everything got started. Per statute, we need to have a community advisory meeting. And one of the changes with our new partner in Norris is to have at least an annual meeting regarding program outcomes. Many of you would already be receiving that information through some regular meetings that we already have, such as with the police chief, sheriff's department, school districts, county board, judges, DA's office, and so on. We regularly share program outcome information with those groups, but this particular committee is really for those of you who'd like to be, I don't want to say more active and involved, but have more regular information and be able to meet in on a smaller scale as an advisory committee. It could be professionals, but also we're looking for folks in the community who are just really interested in the program and have a vested interest in making sure the youth in our community are successful. So that's really part of the intent for today's meeting, is really to garner that interest for folks who'd want to be a part of that committee. We are still really working on what that committee would look like, how often we would meet, how many folks need to be on the committee, specific issues to tackle. But we really believe that it's important to have professional input from our partners, as well as community input on the folks that live here in our community. So this is my information. I will put this up again later in the presentation. Excuse me. You could email me or call me if you are interested in specifically being a part of the advisory committee. Again, even if you're not really sure, but you want more information after today, or maybe your question wasn't answered, or you think of a question later, please feel free to reach out to me via email or via telephone, and I am happy to connect back with you and answer any additional information. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the history of the Youth Treatment Center, the past and the current site, talk a little bit about program utilization, residential utilization, and shelter utilization. We're going to talk about the benefits of having a youth treatment center here in Washington County, talk a little bit about the process that got here to today and the transition plan we had when everything was shut down. I'll provide some building updates, so that'll be new for you who have all joined us in January to hear what's been going on down the street at the Youth Treatment Center. And then I'll turn it over to Justin and he will jump right in with the pieces on Norris and the program. I know that those of you who joined us in January got to meet the full Norris administration. That was just kind of hard to facilitate in this setting, so we're happy to have Justin here. Okay, a little bit of history on Washington County Youth Treatment Center. You may be surprised to learn that this original program started in 1987 as a shelter and respite program. It served mainly male and female adolescents from 12 to 17, and its main purpose was really for balancing accountability for youth and community safety. You might remember the very, very first site was just down the street over on Fifth Avenue, kind of over by Pillars and Blondie Pop. It was a house right on the block over there. And it also served youth primarily on delinquency or GIPS orders. So those were youth who either couldn't remain at home due to behavioral needs or had gotten in some trouble or committed crimes due to their behavioral or mental health needs. The interesting part about this particular time is that the Youth Treatment Center was just one part of a non-secure placement option in the community. We all know we have a juvenile secure here, juvenile detention center, but juvenile secure or non-secure options at that time was a boys and a girls group home that was also run by Nova in town. And so either if it was a longer placement stay, could because shelter and respite are usually very short term, up to 60 days. But if a youth was going to need to be placed outside the home for longer, they could possibly be placed in a group home placement. Those group homes closed, so we knew that we needed more space for our youth who needed to be in out-of-home care, and especially for boys. So that's when we took a look at the current site. Let me check if there's any questions. So the current site, which is what's down here on West Washington, is built in 1996. It still serves male and female adolescents 12 to 17. And it was originally built as a 20-bed facility for shelter and respite care. The interesting part about this point in time is we saw rising out-of-home care costs for residential treatment, and that the closest residential treatment really to our community then was St. Emilion Lakeside down on 89th and Capitol. Close enough, but far enough away that kids were no longer in their communities, and it was only for boys. So we also had no place for our girls and young ladies to go who needed therapeutic services. So, excuse me, so around that time, we expanded to have a residential treatment center here in Washington County. We also had, it was right next door, right? Tri-County Center, or was that right inside? Yeah. Oh yeah, right by the Samaritan, there was the Tri-Center Alternative School. And that was a small, about 10 students run by the West Bend School District, a small alternative school that basically, aside from some other kids from the district, our kids up at Shelter and Residential attended. When Tri-Center closed, we briefly had some schooling done inside our residential treatment center, but kind of based on some fiscal decisions and really the desire to keep kids in their home schools, to keep those community relationships, relationship with their teachers and things like that, we decided to no longer provide educational services and just work with the school districts that the kids were already attending. A big piece of that is also, excuse me, continuity of care. And again, just keeping kids connected to their community. So I'm just gonna step and grab a drink for a second. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about program utilization time. These numbers are very interesting for me. In terms of residential, you can see sort of this increase in average length of stay over the past 5 years, but the last 3 years have been remarkably consistent, which is very interesting. I will I will say that what we've seen in terms of increases in out-of-home care days is congruent with what we're seeing nationally and across the state with longer stays in foster care, whether that's family foster care, regular foster care, group homes, residentials. We do see just those increases in stays due to complex family issues, mental health issues with kids, parents and youth really needing more time to be able to come back together and be able to live at home. The other piece is that there's just better awareness now of trauma and what that means, and how we help kids and how we help families, and all of that takes time. So overall, that has also contributed to the increase in stay. I'd say those shelter stays are a little trickier to track. Kids in shelter could be a couple nights, a week, up to 60 days. And kids come in and out of shelter for different reasons. When kids are in residential treatment, they're generally in residential treatment for a chunk of time, working on goals, trying to learn some skills. They're there. It's a much more, let's call it like a continuous stay, where shelter kids might be there for a few days, they go home, something happens. I don't know, it's a more fluid sort of stay and a little bit harder to track from a number perspective. But these sort of like, I would call these are almost sort of like the demographic, the average length of stay. This will be one piece of many outcomes we'll be tracking once Riverbend Place is up and running. So the benefits of having a youth treatment center here in Washington County, we went through assessing the treatment center and the rising out-of-home care costs, and we just really believe that keeping kids here in a community makes good sense. It makes good sense fiscally that kids are here in their community rather than outside. In terms of stays are usually shorter. We have sort of a lower daily rate for kids in our community than other residentials. I will say that our residential kids can see, because kids go to their home schools, they can be active in the community, they still have jobs. I mean, the residential sort of, it's not a big campus type residential, so I mean, certain kids would not necessarily be appropriate for this type of setting. But generally the kids who we know will do well, going to school, seeing their families on a regular basis, keeping their jobs, being connected to the community, it's really important to keep them here. And the faster we can get them home means, less fiscal resources spent on treatment, and we can use those resources to support the family in other ways. Youth are held accountable. There's always a piece of that, right, in youth supervision, accountability for crimes they have committed, things that they're out and about doing in the community. It's the seriousness of being placed outside the home. It's not a joke when a kid has to be removed from the parental home for whatever reason that might be. And they really have to work on specific goals. Every kid that comes into residential treatment has a specific treatment goal, or treatment plan, I'm sorry, with goals and skills that they're building to work on while they're there. They're there for a purpose that is measured regularly. They have a whole team, not only the folks that are in the residential, but also folks at HSD and the family, and they work together to see how the youth and the family are doing, and they work on that. So there's specific rehabilitation and skill building that happens there. Family preservation. I think this is probably my favorite part about having a facility or a program right here in our community. It's hard for some of our parents to get out to places like McGuanago or Pewaukee or Oconomowoc or Eau Claire. Having kids here in our community keeps them close. It allows for parents to come over after work to do a visit, bring dinner over, do a family therapy session. I mean, it really keeps those family connections in ways that are more difficult when kids are placed farther away. And I think that is really meaningful to treatment progress. It certainly is meaningful for families when the goal is always to get these kids back home, and the more involved a parent can be to do family therapy, again, maybe do a weekend visit when kids get there and be able to come back during the week to go to school. All of that, just having those touch points with the family are really important. Similarly, the educational continuity is also very important. I can appreciate having a small school setting, but I really truly believe in the kids staying in their home schools whenever it's possible. We have great communication and partnerships with school districts in Washington County, and we're able to continue having kids continue to work there, but we continue to keep those relationships and keep a close watch on how kids are doing while they're staying at our center, and we stay on top of their schoolwork. And it's just really great because they can keep those connections with teachers, coaches, peers, hopefully positive peers. But I mean, it keeps a sense of normalcy. They're already removed from the home, but being able to stay in their communities to go to school. School is generally, from a social perspective, is so good for kids. Taking them out of that and all the other changes that are happening, it's really good just to keep this straight continuity. And maintain community connections. Part of that is the family, part of that is the school, part of that is kids that have jobs or are part of clubs. You know, it's hard for kids to be kind of plucked out of our community and they go somewhere else and stay a strange place they didn't know, where they didn't grow up. They know that grandma's in the step down the street. That's really hard. So maintaining community connections, and we're able to wrap services around them quicker when they come out of residential treatment, whether that's DCS services or CLTS services, or just even getting in-home workers in to help the family continue to work together for aftercare. All those things are really important. I'm just pausing to check for questions if they don't pop up. Okay, so how did we get here? We had a competitive bid process in fall of 2019. We went through the county RFP process, written applications posted, all of that good stuff. We had a decent amount of interest, people that inquired about, or agencies that inquired about running our shelter and residential program, but we had 2 serious applicants. They went through a very large written application, which was reviewed by a panel from HSD. It was worker, supervisory, administrative level folks who reviewed the application, and then each applicant went through an in-person interview, and all of that was scored through the county RFP process. And at the end of that, we selected Norris as the new provider. So the interesting part about picking a new provider is that even though Washington County has had this program in our community for 30 years, and we've been at that current site for about 20, when a new provider takes over, this whole program needs to be relicensed by the state. That includes the physical building and the actual program. So that includes everything that is required per statute. So you may already be aware, you'll hear more later, about Norris's program in McGuanago. They already run a very awesome program for boys in McGuanago. Riverbend Place is considered a new program. So not an extension of anything that is for Norris now on their campus, or anything that we had here in Washington County. So a new license cannot be issued until all the statutory requirements are in place, and then the state comes out, does a site visit. So with all of that on the table, we, meaning HSD, facilities, Norris, consulted with licensing on what improvements needed to be done to the physical building. We did a large study on everything, on the entire building, because it's been around since 1996 without any major upgrades or improvements. And we anticipated about a 60 to 90 day shutdown of the program. We wanted to do this with no kids in the building, do the work. It's just easier to get in there and get some big project, well, big-ish projects done, even painting the big project when you're talking about a building that size. And we're doing pretty good. Our last kids were there about January 27th, and our facilities team got in there around February 3rd. And general contractor work began the first week of March. So despite even all the COVID-19 stuff, I mean, we had really hoped to be open by the end of May. We are still very much on track for probably early to mid-June, and with everything going on, I think we're very happy that we are still on really on track. So with that, we had to make sure that all of our youth that were staying there, we had a handful of youth that were in treatment at the youth treatment center. We made sure that they had other placements secured. A few went to foster care, a few went home, a few had a friend's parents get licensed as foster parents to take him so he could finish out his senior year here in West Bend, which was awesome. We had talked a lot with our out-of-county partners to use their shelter because our shelter program was going to be closed for short-term placements. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 situation, a lot of our out-of-county partners decided not to take out-of-county kids, completely understandably. So that program or that particular plan, we've been lucky enough to not need it, and I'm going to say that out loud, with a few weeks to go. We've been very lucky, and we obviously could not foresee sort of these barriers. The other thing that we have here, of course, in the county is the county juvenile secure. When kids meet minimum requirements for secure detention, we can use secure. We try not to do that sometimes, even if they do meet minimum requirements, just because, you know, it's always best to keep kids at home or when we have a shelter in shelter. So what we have done, some kids, yes, have gone to secure, and we have seen some increased costs using GPS. We've been trying to put more electronic monitoring on kids who can safely remain at home and in the community during this time, but need some extra oversight. So in place of shelter, I think we have used more GPS at this point. Just check questions. So building updates. So we are at 16 resident rooms, down from the original 20. That has to do with the size of the rooms. It's very interesting. We got in there and started looking around and measuring. There are a few rooms that no longer meet the statutory requirement for size. So we've repurposed those rooms into something else. A family visit room, a private phone call room, a sensory room. So we've been able to use this space differently, which is completely okay. It just means that we're at 16 residents that can be there at one time instead of 20. We have done some security internet upgrades. The current system that ran, or the old system that ran, what we were using currently for cameras and security and that sort of thing, was outdated and no longer supported. So while we were in there doing some general upgrades, that was just one of those things that it was time. It had been around for a long time and needed some significant upgrades so it could run the way that Norris needed it to make sure that kids were secure in the building. Bathroom and kitchen improvements. The bathrooms and kitchens had been original. Licensing, a piece for licensing is things that are not in disrepair, which means overly worn, which could invite a safety concern or invite vandalism or graffiti or those types of things. So the kitchen and bathroom needed improvements because they had just been original and things were getting old and broken, and facilities had been out and fixing them a lot, and you know, it was kind of like the nickel and diming situation. And then we had updates for some normal wear and tear, so carpet, painting, deep cleaning, just things over the last 20 years have fallen in, I wouldn't say disrepair, but it just needed to be updated. And while we didn't have kids there, we took the opportunity to get the building exactly where it needed to be for licensing. So that is my part about some updates. I would welcome any questions now specific to what I've talked about so far, and I'll give folks a minute. Remember, you need to raise your hand if you're in the video call, and if you're on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand to ask a question, and then *6 to unmute yourself. You can also type in questions. One question. Are there, so we have one question. Are there any anticipated changes in future use from past use? Yes, I would say yes.
No longer rested.
Right, so now we are specifically going to be just doing shelter stays, which are up to 60 days, and residential treatment. Historically, it's been used as a respite placement, which is really short-term stays, like, what would you say, like weekends? Mm-hmm. Another question. So it sounds largely like operations, although under new management, are staying the same, and you're on track to open as scheduled. Yes, the answer is yes, generally. We are staying the same in terms of the services we are offering, and that we're on track to open. Yeah, we're a little delayed, I'd say, when it's all said and done. Oh. Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. Here. Try to move closer and see. Sorry, we can't hear Justin. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Can we hear me better now?
Yeah, 1 second as we work through some technical. Yes, I hear we can hear Justin now. Yep, sorry about that. Thank you for letting us know.
It would have been a bummer to talk a lot and nobody hear me.
You just want to you want to just recap what you just said?
Yeah, so one big difference will no longer
And I think we answered the next question, which is that management is changing, but generally things are staying the same, and if we're on track to open. I think I finished saying that like yet from the state to do their site visit, but we are anticipating within the next 3 weeks. So I think when all said and done, we're probably going to be 3 weeks behind or later than we expected, which with everything going on, we're pretty happy about. What will serve as respite? Well, a couple of things here. Respite for younger kids and adolescents are find foster homes, or we don't like to the facility or the building or the shelter have because it's not good for them to have new habits and that sort of thing.
In terms of teenagers for respite, we always try to work with informal support, grandparents, uncles, friends, background checks, we'll do a home visit. We try to use as much. It kind of depends on the case by case of what's going on. We do have some county foster care partners that we use for older kids who need respite and things like that.
Hear about will we continue to transport kids to and from school? The answer is yes. Just as before, kids will be transported to their home schools, and we'll be working. We've been placed in their team, and the social workers from HSD will be working directly with the schools and our contacts there to do transportation and let them know what our plan is. Another question, will MA or insurance cover any of the stay? Not really. This is sort of a twofold question. When kids are in residential for on a what's called a child in need and protection and services petition, so a CHIPS petition, those stays get covered mostly through out-of-home care dollars. And also when youth are in residential care or that could also be covered through out-of-home care dollars. Plus there is a cost to the parents. It does go through child support, and the amount that the parents would owe or be charged is determined by child support, and that would be for a residential stay. Shelter stays have a daily rate, and I honestly don't remember what that is right now, but I could get that out to this group. And the parents are charged for shelter stays. Oh, the funding methods question. Yes, so out-of-home care dollars, and then parental cost for through child support. Those are the funding methods for residential and shelter care. I don't know if you can speak to MA. Does MA cover any pieces around the residential?
I mean,
so there was a question about medical assistance, and I don't know the ins and outs of the funding from residential care, but MA, when kids are not at home care, does cover a piece of residential or the therapeutic part, medications,
any doctor appointments.
Yeah, physical doctor and dental appointments, things like that. How the costs get divided up, and if someone is really interested in that, I can kind of send what the cost breakdown is. I don't know that off the top of my head, but pieces of it, yes. But the actual, I'd say the majority of the stay, no, not really. That's all through out-of-home care dollars, and also parental share or parental billing. These are great questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that we have the sound pieces figured out and we know how to answer our questions, we're going to move on to Justin's piece of the presentation, and we'll be checking questions as we go because they do pile up, and we want to make sure that we don't miss anyone. So we'll be tag teaming that and taking a look.
You just want to keep an eye on the questions then?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. Let me know if at any point you can't hear me for some reason. I hope we got that worked out now.
The question we have one question. Oh. Can runaways still be placed at the facility?
Can runaways? I guess I would need a little more specific. So like if somebody runs away from home, are we talking?
Yeah, I'm guessing that would be if they picked up someone who was missing from care. Officer, are you specifically talking about when you just pick someone who's out randomly, or do you mean one of our kids who are missing from care?
I suppose that would still just go through the normal channels.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume in either one of those cases, we could probably utilize the shelter.
Yeah,
We'd probably utilize shelter for that based on the age of the youth. If it was a smaller or younger child, we would be looking at probably an emergency foster home. I think we would take those on a case by case. HSD works in partnership with our acute care, and there's always an on-call supervisor from HSD, YJ, and CPS programs. So we would probably just try to triage that at the time something like that came in, and then connect with Justin and his team about what needed on a case by case basis. So it's not really a yes, and it's not really a no. It's a good question. We're going to write that one down because maybe we need to have more communication about that.
Definitely.
Thank you for that question.
Okay. So yes, I'm Justin Ernisse. I'm the group care manager with Norris, and more specifically Riverbend Place. A little bit about my background. I born and raised in West Bend. I grew up in this community. I went to West Bend West High School. And it means a lot to me, and I'm really excited to be in this position now. For out of college, I graduated at Stevens Point in 2012, and I actually worked at YTC for about 4 years. I started right out of school as a youth care worker on the floor doing direct care work. From there, I was really interested in learning kind of the flip side of things and how kids get to the point where they need to be placed in residential, the court side of things, school side of things, human services, YJ side of things. And I was a case manager for St. A for their CCS program, which is actually contracted with Washington County for the last 2.5 years. And my office was right across the street in the mental health suite. And it was a really great experience. I got to learn a lot about the other side of the coin, really, and build a lot of great relationships with county social workers, CPS workers, Coral and her entire team, and also really get to know a lot of the school districts across the county and build relationships with workers there and principals. And it was a great experience to get me to a place where I kind of know a lot of the ins and outs of Washington County, a little bit about everything, and put me in a great place to move forward with this new position and new program.
Just kidding.
So a little quick history about Norris. We were founded in 1917 by a man named Daniel Neal Norris. And he founded this program in McGuanago. He bought this 900-acre farm, and it started out more as a vocational skills and a legitimate working farm for at-risk youth. He was from kind of a pretty well-known rich family in Milwaukee, and he decided to kind of use his funds for the good of society. Today, we're still with 900 acres. It's a very awesome campus. We have a high ropes course and low ropes course. We have a giant pond where we're fishing, canoeing, camping for our residential program. We do currently just serve boys. So one new thing for, well, not for me, but I guess Norris as a whole, will be diving into working with young ladies now. And I know the higher ups at Norris have been trying to figure out how we could do that for a while. So they're all very excited about that opportunity. And then some newer updates in 2017, we started a treatment foster care program. And I believe now we're up to five licensed homes. So that continues to grow and is a really exciting part. And I did skip over our school district. The Norris School District is the smallest one in the state, and it's right across the street from Norris's main campus. All the boys at Norris attend school there, so they just have to walk down the campus, go to school, and they get to walk back up. The school district, though, does open up its doors to youth from other districts as well. So to speak a little bit to the Norris mission and vision, Norris's mission is to strengthen youth and families by providing a circle of care, a continuum of education, support, and treatment availability. Norris's why is defined as we are a connection that gives children and families the safety to tell and understand their story, the impact it has, and gives them hope that the possibilities for the future are endless. Norris also has a vision to become a provider of choice and employer of choice. So why Washington County? When Norris was presented with this opportunity, they were very excited because they've been working with Washington County for a while. Youth have been spending residential treatment at Norris at the main campus. It's been a partnership for quite a few years.
Okay.
So they were very excited to hear about this because we share a lot of the same values about treatment philosophy. Our programming really fits with what Washington County would like to accomplish and having those positive outcomes for the youth of Washington County. Especially exciting too that it's about a 45 to an hour drive to our main campus, but that is like still a good distance where we're able to utilize our main campus, especially during the summer. We'll be able to take kids on day trips there to utilize the ropes course, the fishing and the canoeing, all that good stuff. We actually have a separate pavilion that's right by the pond area that can be set up for having like cookouts and spending the whole day there, especially during the summertime. So the community engagement piece I'm really excited about. I know in the past YTC has sometimes been not greatly looked at in the community, and I'm hoping that we can work to change that. That was kind of the same piece for Norris in Mugwanago for a long time. It was kind of, the black sheep of the community. People didn't really want much to do with it. They just saw it as a place where the bad kids go. And over the last few years, we've worked really hard to change that. And we've started to see the community embracing us as a positive, especially volunteering at like local food pantries, the Lions Club in Mugwanago, and hosting fundraisers with the Lions Club and getting our boys out working and doing positive things in the community. I'm a big believer that we need to get our youth in positive roles in the community, and they need to see themselves as positive contributors in the community to really switch their mindset. So we'll be looking into organizing things like park cleanup days with our youth to help them get community service hours knocked out. And then also connecting with community partners like hopefully Ruby's Pantry down the road and other local businesses and nonprofits that need volunteer help. One second. So we offer a lot of different services for our treatment kids and even our shelter kids. One of the main difference is for treatment and shelter is when our shelter kids come in, we have groups and stuff that's available for them, but per statutes, we cannot force them to participate in any sort of treatment. Our treatment kids are there on different orders, they're there on court orders, so there's a little more leeway and not forcing them is the wrong word, but helping them participate in why they're there.
Them to participate.
There we go. So some of the things we're going to be offering are individual therapy. Currently we have one clinician on staff and we're still looking to fill our clinical supervisor position. They'll have roles that are kind of dual. They'll be doing some case management as well as the individual and family therapy piece, along with helping running group therapies and a lot of other therapies. And then they also will have the aftercare service piece. So even once they discharge, we believe in providing a period of aftercare where the therapists and clinician would stay involved with the youth and the family to help them transition home and hopefully prevent them from coming back or going to a different facility or something like that. Our other thing we're really excited about is our direct care staff will be very involved in running groups, especially recreation and wellness, therapy groups. We're a big believer in like a wellness approach. Nutrition and being active and all those things are very important to us. And we're currently developing a lot of rec therapy activities that we'll be utilizing with our kiddos. What's the question we got?
The question we have is, what evidence-based programming will you be using?
Sure. We can, I believe we're coming up with some of that. Oh, there we go.
At least some of them.
Yeah, we'll be using some trauma, well, our basis of trauma-informed care, and then off of that, we'll be using dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, as well as our trauma-informed care model is risking connection, and these are all evidence-based programming. Any other questions on this slide? I'm kind of jumping around on the slides, but
That's okay.
there we go. So the educational piece, as for Norris, as I said, they have the smallest school district in the state, but we're a big believer in Washington County of keeping our kids in their home districts whenever possible, and really building those relationships with the schools on how we can help best assist keep our kids there. We're a big believer that they're going to learn the best in their home schools and their home communities. So like the question came up before, we will still transport shelter and treatment kids to and from school for Washington County kids. In the event that kids are not able to go to their home district, or if we have, which we can get into a little bit later, out of county treatment kids, we are working with Norris School District to be able to provide education for them at a combination of them being able to do online education at our facility, as well as going down to the school district in Norris. We will have a space called the Learning Lounge where we will have computer access for the kiddos that will be supervised, and staff to help assist them through any type of educational needs.
Do you want to take these questions out?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have two questions. The first question is, are there any medications that'll not be allowed? I don't know if we can speak to that because Norris is working with a psychiatrist, and we would be probably defaulting to either the Norris psychiatrist and some of our kids who, county kids who would be going into treatment. I think there's conversations around if they're already connected with a psychiatrist at the county behavioral health, wanting to keep that continuity of care consistent, so we wouldn't be changing providers, I don't think.
Well, I guess kind of the cool thing is our psychiatrist is going to be.
Oh, that is right. I did forget that.
Yeah, so the psychiatrist, Dr. Kazuki.
Dr. Kazuki, that's right.
He's the county's behavioral health psychiatrist for youth already. And Norris, actually, before any of this even happened, was contracting with him, and he's our licensed psychiatrist as well at the Norris main campus. So the continuity of care piece is really cool because he'll be our psychiatrist as well. And a lot of kids that come in already have been working with him, and they'll be able to continue working with him. Or if they just start working with him when they leave, they'll be able to transition with him, which is super important because psychiatrists build these relationships with kids, get to know them, and a lot of times, they're bounced back to a different one. So we're really excited that the Washington County youth will be able to have that continuity piece.
The next question is, will there be any substance use disorder counseling offered?
Yeah, our clinician right now is actually going to be pursuing her SACIT. So that will definitely be an area we will be looking into further. I can't say right off the jump we'll be able to address those things like
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah.
So while Norris doesn't have a specific provider for substance use disorder counseling, it was discussed in our RFP process around sort of our community needs. Right now, any youth who have a substance use disorder issue or high risk or whatnot, we partner with several other agencies in the community. I can't exactly remember all of the agencies as part of it, so I don't necessarily just want to name one. But there's a Steps to Sobriety program in town that does substance abuse or substance use disorder counseling groups geared for youth. Professional Service Group I know is one of those. I want to say Kettle Moraine or Alaris might be also there. And I don't want to leave anybody out, so I apologize if you know there's another agency, but there is a small group of agencies in town who partner to run this program for our youth. And it's something that, you know, as Human Services Department, we partner with, and we would be bringing once Norris is licensed. And the other piece about today is we can't get into too much nitty gritty specifically because technically the program isn't licensed and open for business yet. But please know that that is a hot topic and a huge need for our youth, and we're going to figure out how to get that done, because it is, I mean, honestly, it is a gap in services in our community. So I know our behavioral health department is looking at trying to figure that out, and then of course partnering with community agencies to get that done. We have one more question as long as we're here.
Yeah.
It says, could you share the process of coordinating with school districts? Who from your agency will be the point person and who will be the school's contact?
Cool. I'm really excited about the educational piece. I'm kind of taking that whole lead. I really know our school districts pretty well. So starting off, I'll probably be the main point of contact for a lot of school related things. And then also our clinician, she'll be Michaela Killiner, will be, like I said, kind of in a dual role of doing therapy and case management. What was the first part?
It was who's just how you're going to coordinate with school districts and who will be the
So
point
yeah,
person.
we're still definitely working through that protocol and process, so I can't get too much into it yet as it hasn't really been approved or finalized. But that's kind of the broader piece right there.
The other piece of that, I mean, we can, like Justin said, the Riverbend Place part isn't specifically outlined yet.
Yeah.
But always the youth social worker of the Human Services Department is a first point of contact if there were any questions or concerns or trying to keep continuity of care. I also realize that only my contact information is in this PowerPoint. I can see who's asking the questions, so I'm taking your name down to loop back with some of you on some of the questions you're asking, like this one, for example. I can send Justin and Michaela's information, but it is a little sticky right now because they aren't officially licensed. But I'm happy to send out any more information. And those of you who have asked to have the PowerPoint, yes, I can email the PowerPoint to you. And I also believe that the presentation, if you'd like to view it again, will be available on YouTube. Thank you for these great questions.
Yes, absolutely.
I gotta write this down here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're good.
Sorry.
All right, so performance and quality improvement. So Norris does believe that continuous quality improvement is critical to understanding how to achieve the best outcomes for youth and families. So we will continue to monitor the following outcomes at Riverbend to analyze program effectiveness. So some of those are youth maintain placement in their current school throughout out-of-home care placement, the severity of need related to at least one presenting problem, as assessed in intake, is lessened as assessed by the clinician, successful completion or progress towards treatment goals, discharge to a less restrictive placement, youth are not re-referred within 1 year of discharge, and turnover is low for both the rec care staff and program leaders. I really like that last point was included. That was a big struggle in the past, was to, well, you get good people in, but keeping them there in the past was difficult. and I'm very excited for some of the different things we'll be doing on that last point. So once a baseline of at least about 1 year of data has been collected, Norris leaders, including our COO, Director of Group Care, and the PQI Supervisor, will meet with Washington County representatives to establish benchmarks and target goals for any necessary program improvements. Norris leaders would then work with the program staff to establish an improvement plan for each outcome requiring action. So we'll be continuously evaluating the program to see that kids are building the skills they need and to be productive and positive members of our community. Do we have any questions off that stuff?
No. So as I alluded to kind of earlier in my presentation, the performance and quality improvement pieces are, I don't know if they're being added, but they are a part of our contract with Norris, between Norris and the county and administration and myself at HSD. We'll be meeting regularly with Norris to determine, I mean, some of them are here, determine what we would like to track from a treatment perspective and outcome perspective. And we'll be meeting on that regularly, especially as we get up and running. But then that's the information we'd be sharing with our community partners. In some, I think you'll see a more formalized process of that as we move on. Again, they're just getting up and running and we need something to report on,
Correct.
Of course, and to have youth being served. But that I think is a huge piece of this that maybe hasn't been done before, being able to report back to our Human Services Committee, to our community partners, and just be able to show how important it is to have youth served here in our community.
Absolutely.
Let me.
I believe so.
I think that is all for our formal presentation. Are there any other questions for either Norris, Justin, or myself? I'm gonna put my information just back up there again. Again, if you don't ask a question today and you think of something, please feel free to email or call me. Email is the best at this point while we're still on virtual campus. It's quicker. Or if you're interested in being a specific member of the Community Advisory Committee, please get a hold of me. I'd love to talk with you. Oh, great question. How will the facility be staffed? What are your staffing levels?
Oh, so we try to maintain a 1-to-4 ratio, staff to kids. Overnight, we'll always have 2 staffs and 1 leader. I'm kind of excited. We'll have a little bit of a different philosophy about leadership, and our leadership will be very involved in all things direct care. We'll always have, so there's me as the program manager, we have a supervisor, and then a milieu coordinator, and our clinician, and then the eventual clinical supervisor, as well as 2 overnight leads. All of them will have what's called leader on duty roles. So we'll always have a leader in the building at all times to help deal with any crisis situations that arise, and that includes weekends. We'll all be taking a rotating weekend where we will be there on the weekends even, which is pretty rare for leadership in these types of facilities. A lot of leaders still want the Monday through Friday schedule, first shift, and we're well aware that first shift is the easiest shift in residential. Second shift and the weekends are when the leadership is needed, and we're really excited to provide that.
So just to clarify, you'll have leadership on site.
There will be the leader on duty role will be on site at all times.
Oh, I love these questions. Keep them coming. Will you have a specific police liaison officer?
Ooh. I would like to.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Historically, we have not. As those of you who are on the call, some of you may know that. I think as soon as we get the green light from the state on the program, we actually just talked about this, myself, Justin, leadership from Norris, and Director of Human Services just talked about this, getting West Bend PD and the Sheriff's Department together and our law enforcement partners in general and having a specific conversation. We do know that Riverbend Place, as which I'm trying to use its new name, is is the city. So West Bend Police Department responds to that, to any concerns or when we call, which we've always appreciated. And I think maybe something that wasn't done in the past was building that relationship with staff, between staff at the facility and the police department. And we had really planned on having an open house for everybody right after we got licensed and right before kids came in. But right now with everything going on, I think we're not doing that. But it is one of the first thing on the list to be engaging with at least West Bend PD on who the staff are, walking through the building, getting to meet people, and all those really important things to keep continuity for kids and just build those relationships. So
yeah, absolutely.
So while the answer right now is no, if West Bend PD wants to talk about one, I'm certainly happy to have that conversation. It's a really great idea.
Same here.
Of course, we do work with the police liaison officers with all the schools. We have really great relationships with all of them through mostly our YJ program in general and our social workers. So we're happy to do so. That was a long answer to your question. Hold on for a couple of minutes for any other questions. Leave my information up there. You want to say your information, I suppose?
Yeah, sure. So my email is jernisse@norriscenter.org. And then my office number is 262-910-3883. I don't know, can you just type that into that?
That's really a good. I don't think I can.
Okay.
I can't just type in here.
So yeah, just reach out to Coral too if you didn't quite catch my contact info, but I'm open for questions. If things come up as well, shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I really look forward to answering questions and building these relationships in the community.
And many of you have just written in and said thank you for answering all of your questions. I think Justin and I want to thank you for joining us today. And some of you that stuck on the call, even through some of the more repetitive pieces from this morning and our technical difficulties, we appreciate it. And we look forward to talking further about Riverbend Place. And we hope to have some really great news about it being licensed, I'd say, in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
So, if there are no other questions today, I think we are done. I will hang on, keep it open for a little bit in case you think of something. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.